After Dad and I left, Mom also went to move in with her mother, about 2 hours from where Dad and I were living. She called me on the phone and asked if I wanted to live with her. I didn't know what to say. I was 10 years old at most, and I loved both of my parents. Not wanting to hurt her, I told her yes, and a few weeks later she came to get me. There was a custody battle, and Dad got to see me on weekends. At my new school, I was entered into the gifted and talented program, and I made a few friends, but I never really felt like I fit in. But I started playing soccer there, and that kept me busy. At the time, I had no idea that my father had begun using harder drugs as a result of me moving in with Mom. More on that later. After a while, my mom met a new guy. He seemed like a nice man, had 2 kids of his own from a previous marriage, and they hit it off well. Less than a year later, they got engaged, and we moved out of my grandmother's place into a new house, at least an hour or so away. I started school again in a new place, trying to make new friends. My dad kept driving the long distance to get me on the weekends, but I could tell it was taking a toll on his wallet. Also, it was during these weekends that other family members started hinting at me that my father had a drug problem. After a few months of living in the new place, the new guy began to be abusive toward my mother. Shortly thereafter, she and I left and moved in with her uncle, who happened to live very close to my father. Well, my great uncle was and is a severe alcoholic, so that living arrangement didn't last long. We soon moved in with my mom's sister, who lived in another state, about a 6-hour drive from my dad. I was not happy about this new living situation, and my grades began to slip. I did everything I could to avoid going to my new school. I would still see my dad on weekends, but the extra distance made it even harder. Of course, my mom and her sister began fighting, and we eventually ended up moving back in with Dad. This was when the drug problem really came to light, as both he and Mom started doing the drugs together. This situation was toxic at best, and soon they began fighting again as before, to the point that they were physically aggressive toward one another. I tried to ignore it as much as I could, and just focus on doing well in school, but it was hard. Eventually, Mom moved back in with her mom. There was another custody battle, and my grandmother, Dad's mom, was awarded custody. From there, things were, relatively speaking, calm until around my sophomore year of high school. I had been getting great grades, participating in the academic team, etc. I would occasionally sneak off with some friends and drink or smoke weed, but I didn't let that interfere with the real world. However, one day my mother called me and said that, before I was born, my dad had molested my sister. At first, I didn't believe her. Mom is always looking to start an argument when it comes to Dad. But then my sister eventually told me herself. I was heartbroken. I loved my dad so much, despite all of his problems. I still do. But at the same time, I hated him for doing that. My sister and I are very close, and I had a lot of trouble learning how to forgive him. He ended up spending 3 years in prison, missing my high school graduation, and only recently got out. We've been in contact and have seen each other a few times, but it's hard. Toward the end of my high school years, one thing was certain for me. I had to get away from my family. I needed to apply for every scholarship I could find, go to a good school, get a degree, and make something of myself. I wasn't going to let my children go through the same thing I did, so I rededicated myself, and I succeeded. I got into a good school, not an incredibly prestigious school, but a good one, pursuing a degree in chemical engineering. I earned enough scholarships and grants to avoid taking out a single loan, and I'll be a senior in the fall. I've done much better in college than I could have imagined, and I'm lined up to get myself into a highly ranked graduate school to pursue my PhD. Interspersed through this story are other major events, mostly related to girls, but I didn't bother including them because that would have made it even longer. I know very few people will take the time to read all this, and I'm not even 100% sure why I wrote it all out, but I hope anyone who does bother to read it takes something from it. TLDR: had shitty drug and alcohol addicted parents, moved around a lot, worked my ass off, made myself a success. Moral of the story: